He released the girl H, deep and unconsciously holding in his arms. The collision just now had been quite hard. His lip was split. Kingsley let out a muffled grunt. In the northern winter, the ground freezes and the roads become slippery. Although it's only 6 o'clock when I finish class and step outside, it's already completely dark. On the way back to the dorm, the street lamp happened to be broken. I wasn't paying attention and slipped, sliding straight down a slope. The increasingly rapid pace made her feel utterly terrified, but strangely, she couldn't utter a word or let out a single sound. She couldn't even call for help. I didn't dare to imagine how much it would hurt if you were to fall to the ground. At this moment, he was sliding down faster and faster. I didn't dare to move his hands randomly. He could only spread his arms wide to maintain his balance. The road ahead was pitch-black, and she was terrified. What scares me even more is not knowing whether there's anyone ahead. If I were to hit someone at my current speed, I might very well break their bones. Just as I was utterly despairing. Tan Kingsley, not far away, seemed to hear a faint rustling sound behind him, getting steadily closer and closer. He glanced back and saw a girl wearing a white down jacket swiftly gliding toward him. Because it was too dark, Tan Kingsley couldn't make out the girl's facial expression, but her sliding motion seemed somewhat clumsy and like something done on purpose. It rather felt as if she simply couldn't stop herself. Almost unconsciously, Tan Kingsley extended his arm. The moment I crashed into him, he exerted force, pulling the person forcefully toward himself. His heart almost stopped, but finally it did stop, because of the momentum from her slide. The two of them had no choice but to fall onto the ground. The moment he fell to the ground, his face was momentarily pressed downward by the impact. The moment they touched the soft texture, both of them froze simultaneously. I was stunned by the fall. Gasping in pain and forgetting to get up from the ground, she just kept staying in that position. The lips of the two pressed tightly together and their breaths grew hot. His eyelashes gently brushed against the boy's cheek. Both of them paused for a few seconds. Tan Kingsley below was the first to react and lifted the person on his back, at which point I finally came to his senses and realized what was happening. The road, which had just been pitch-black, suddenly lit up with streetlight, and Tan Kingsley clearly saw the girl's face. Her face was flushed, and her nose tip and the corners of her eyes also had varying degrees of redness. When his gaze fell upon her lips, Tan Kingsley couldn't help but touch his own lips. Her lips swelled up almost in an instant, and Tan Kingsley wasn't much better off either. Just now, two girls ran down from the direction where I just slid down. Tan Kingsley climbed to his feet, brushed the dirt off his clothes, and glanced once more at I. He was a bit speechless after all. HED saved her, yet this person didn't even say a single word of thanks. I quickly realized what had just happened and made several gestures in rapid succession. She wanted to explain her earlier actions to the boy standing before her, but right now, she wasn't quite sure how to put her feelings into words, so the sign language produced is a bit messy, but it's incredibly fast. So, from Tan Kingsley's perspective, what he saw was an incredibly beautiful girl, her face utterly serious as she formed hand seals toward him. I opened her big, blinking eyes and saw Tan Kingsley with a complex expression on his face. Feeling slightly embarrassed, she bent her body slightly and gave Tan Kingsley a slight bow. Tan Kingsley cleared his throat and spoke in a cool, pleasant voice. "It's okay. Just be more careful next time." Just then, his roommate, finally ran down as well. They pulled I aside and examined her closely again and again, before finally turning to Tan Kingsley standing nearby and thanking him. "Sorry, classmate. Thanks for catching with the HI." Tan Kingsley glanced once more at his lips, said nothing more, rubbed his wrist, and started walking back. Only after Tan Kingsley had walked away did her roommate, Gu King, cover her face with excitement and ask, "CHI, Do you know who just saved you? Zhang Zhi shook his head and turned around, only to realize that his other roommate, Zhang Jiaoyi, couldn't hide her excitement either. It's Tam Qingzai. Although both were excited, they didn't forget to support Zhang Zhi as they walked toward the dormitory, chatting all the way. Oops, you don't follow the confession wall. So it's totally normal that you haven't heard about it. Tan Qingzai is a regular feature on the confession wall. His face is so handsome it drives me crazy. But seriously, why has he started dating yet? It seems like Ichi has been single ever since we first year. Hey, what's the big deal? Has Ichi been single all a while? Although the school has officially chosen a campus beauty or heartthrob, everyone knows that Tan Qingzai is universally recognized as the campus heartthrob. Gu King thought for a moment. PCH? I doesn't seem to know at all. Young Jiaoyi. Gu King turned her head to look at Zhang Zhi. Zhi definitely doesn't know, right? Yeah. Zhang Zhi nodded. The three of them continued walking a few more steps, and Zhang Jiaoyi suddenly realized something. Who was that soft, shui minus sounding voice just now? Gu King also realized what had just happened. The two of them stared in shock at Zhang Zhi then. I coolly shocked, grabbed Zhang Lizi's hand. Zhi, did you just speak? Zhang Le's heart suddenly leapt into her throat. She hadn't realized at all that she had unconsciously made a sound just now. And now, being stared at by the two of them, she suddenly felt intensely nervous. She tentatively opened her mouth, saying I. The moment she heard her own voice, it felt as if something inside Zhang Lizi's head had exploded. There was a deafening roar that drowned out all other sounds, leaving her able to hear only the steady thumping of her heart. I can speak now. Having not spoken for 3 years, Zhang Zhi, I had almost forgotten how to make a sound, but at this moment, memories he'd rehearsed countless times suddenly flooded his mind. Her voice was soft and gentle, perfectly tailored to her face. Her delicate, tender tone was strikingly reminiscent of her usual personality. Gu King and Zhang Jiaoyi, disregarding everything else, pulled Zhang Zhi aside and exchanged a few more words with him. It had been 3 years, yet this was the first time they'd ever heard Zhang Lizi's voice. It's actually so soft. Before even returning to the dorm, Zhang Jiaoyi rushed to the supermarket, wanting to buy something to celebrate Zhang Lizi's regained ability to speak. Meanwhile, Zhang Zhi stood by the roadside, practicing speaking over and over again. Her eyes kept reddening uncontrollably once it was confirmed that she had regained her ability to speak normally. Zhang Zhi couldn't wait to call home. When her parents on the other end heard her voice, they were so excited that they slapped their thighs hard. In the evening, Zhang Zhi lay in bed. The dormitory was already dark, and she reached up to her throat, softly testing her voice. The vocal cords are vibrating. Say, really can speak again. That night, she was so excited she was nearly driven mad, and didn't manage to fall asleep until just after 1 o'clock in the morning. When she woke up, Zhang Zhi pulled back the bed curtains. She opened her mouth, wanting to say good morning to them. This time, she couldn't manage to make a sound at all. She tried several more times, yet there was the slightest vibration in her throat. She simply couldn't produce any sound anymore, not even a single character. Zhang Zhi, I almost began to doubt whether everything from last night had been nothing but a beautiful dream. And now, the dream has been cruelly shattered. Her expression was forlorn, and Gu King and Zhang Jiaoyi noticed it right away. They asked cautiously, Zhi, what's wrong? Zhang Zhi clenched his fingers, forcing a smile and shaking his head. She posted a message in the dorm group him stepping out for a bit. As before, Zhang Zhi skillfully checked and unjoined the queue. After waiting a bit, she heard the doctor call her name and walked in. Zhang Zhi typed up what he'd been able to say yesterday and shared it with the doctor. The doctor adjusted his glasses. Zhang Alizia's condition is truly rare even after treating so many patients. The doctor has never encountered anything like it. 3 years ago, Zhang Liziah, I suddenly became mute. The day after she turned 18, she suddenly found herself unable to speak. Unlike those born unable to speak, people who are born unable to speak may still be able to produce sounds similar to whereas Zhang Liziah is completely unable to make any sounds at all. Even the aspirated sounds cannot be produced. Zhang's parents took her to see every doctor, but the results they received were all consistent. Zhang Liziah's vocal cords are completely fine logically speaking. There's no way he could be unable to produce any sound at all. The doctor believes that Zhang Liziah may have certain psychological abnormalities. Because physiologically speaking, she has no problems at all. Thus, Zhang's parents took Zhang Liziah to see a psychologist as well. At first, the psychologist also suspected that Zhang Liziah might have experienced some kind of trauma. However, after several sessions, it became clear that Zhang Liziah did not suffer from any psychological disorder. The doctor told Zhang's family that Zhang Liziah might suddenly start speaking one day. 3 years ago, Zhang Liziah had just finished the college entrance exam and was about to start university. The Zhang family couldn't find the cause of the illness and could only place their hope in the doctor's words. But the truth is that Zhang Liziah has been mute for a full 3 years. Over these 3 years, she tried countless times to make a sound, but unsurprisingly she couldn't utter a single word. It wasn't until later that Zhang Liziah gradually came to accept the fact that she had become a little mute. Now, after finally managing to speak again, she woke up to find that it had all been just a fleeting moment. Zhang Liziah's mood gradually crumbled. She played the voice recording from yesterday, when she had been able to speak normally to the doctor, then looked at the doctor expectantly. After listening to Zhang Liziah's voice message, the doctor's facial expression also became somewhat complicated. Still, since Zhang Liziah was already able to speak yesterday, that means there's a possibility of her recovery, he said reassuringly. The fact that she could speak yesterday is a good sign. Take a closer look and see if anything happened last night that might have triggered you. Only then will you be able to speak normally. Find the root cause and try a few more times. This might help with your recovery. As Zhang Liziah walked out of the hospital, the doctor's words kept echoing in his ears. What happened last night? 6 o'clock in the evening, same time, same place. Zhang Liziah stood on the slope where Hed accidentally slipped last night. His face set with determination as he stared down at the ground. Gu King hesitated slightly. Liziah, maybe you could think about it some more. Zhang Liziah clenched his teeth, took a deep breath, and even ran a short distance before taking off. Immediately afterward, her entire body quickly slid downward. Just like last night, the descent is getting faster and faster. The street tonight are all working fine, and pedestrians on the road are hurrying to avoid it. It wasn't until she landed heavily on the ground that Zhang Liziah rubbed her butt and climbed back up from the floor. She wanted to make an sound, but no matter how many times she tried, she still couldn't do it. When Gu King and Zhang Zhaoui hurried over, they saw Zhang Liziah staring solemnly at the street lamp. They quietly took 2 steps backward. Liziah, don't be impulsive. You really can't break the street. In the end, the two of them still couldn't resist Zhang Liziah's desire to start talking again. They stood aside, keeping watch for Zhang Liziah, who picked up a stone from the ground and hurled it toward the street lamp. I tried several times, but none of them worked. The 2 men standing guard were about to panic. It's now time for the class to let out, and there are quite a few pedestrians on the street. On top of that, Zhang Liziah is famously good minus looking, so it's simply impossible not to attract attention from others. When Ten Kingze passed by, he unconsciously glanced at Zhang Liziah for a moment. A resilient light flashed in the girl's eyes, as if she were determined to smash the street lamp to smithereens. He frowned, silently stepping a bit farther away from Zhang Lizihi. Then, as if remembering something, he dialed the phone number of the school's security office. 5 minutes later, Zhang Lizihi was taken aside by security guards for talking -2, and his advisor was also notified. Zhang Zhaoyi and Gu King were merely lookouts, so they weren't implicated in any way. The counselor noted that Zhang Lizihi had good academic performance, and moreover, she was indeed a very well-behaved girl. Therefore, the counselor didn't report her case to the grade level and only asked her to write a self-criticism. Come on, what's the deal with that Streetletoid? Why does it have it in for you? Luckily, you don't have much strength in your innocent grade either. Alright, if you really end up smashing the Streetletoid, it won't just be a matter of paying damages, there'll definitely be an official reprimand and public criticism. You're already a sophomore, next year you'll be going out for an internship. If there's a mark in your file, what will you do then? You're not allowed to do anything like this again in the future. Did you hear that? Zhang Lizihi lowered his head and nodded. Looking at Zhang Lizihi's dejected back, the counselor shook his head in helplessness. This kid is usually as good as gold. What's gotten into him today? Zhang Lizihi stood under the Streetletoid for a long time, but in the end he was still pulled back to the dormitory by his two roommates. She sat on the bed, dejected and with her head hanging low. She had already accepted that she'd never be able to speak again, but now suddenly she's been given back a single day, and with it, hope. Now how can she ever come to accept the fact that she can't speak again? She kept replaying what had happened last night in her mind. Just as the Streetletoid broke down, I slipped by accident, and I even bumped into Tan Qingze. Zhang Lizihi's confidence was reignited. She took out her phone and quickly typed a few words on the screen, then handed it to Zhang Zhaoyi to read. Do you know where Tan Qingze is? She really did ask the right person. Zhang Zhaoyi pulled up the confession wall and showed it to Zhang Lizihi. It seems Tan Qingze has been around campus lately. There were even still people hitting on him on the confession wall just a while ago. Right now, Ichi is on the basketball court. Zhang Lizihi? I glanced at the picture and quickly put on his shoes before dashing out the door. At this moment, Tan Qingze, who was on the court, had just made a 3- pointer. The stands were filled with continuous cheers, and everyone else had already grown accustomed to it. Wherever Tan Qingze is, there will never be a shortage of spectators, especially at an open-air stadium like this one. I just didn't notice. What's wrong with your mouth? Tan Qingze brushed his lips with the back of his hand and said, I'm fine. The man nudged Tan Qingze with his shoulder. Hey, are you secretly seeing a girlfriend or something? Tan Qingze recalled the girl He seen last night, standing under a Streetletoid and apparently about to smash it. She wasn't wearing anything. She glanced at him briefly and said, What's gotten into you? Seeing that Tan Qingze's reaction seemed a bit off, the person speaking suddenly got fired up. Wow, you really are in trouble. He tugged at Tan Qingze, saying, Stop fighting, stop fighting. Quick, tell me your little girlfriend is really something. She's bitten your mouth so badly. Tan Qingze waved away his teammate's teasing hand, but his ears unconsciously grew slightly warm, and his gaze instinctively swept toward the entrance of the court. Zhang Lizihi stood just outside the crowd. His white down jacket stood out vividly in the winter air. His fingertips were clenched tightly, and his eyes stared straight at him, filled with a mix of stubbornness and apprehension. Following his gaze, his teammate instantly understood. He blew a whistle and started pushing the others toward the sidelines, deliberately leaving enough space for the two of them. Tan Qingze wiped the sweat from his forehead, then slowly walked up to Zhang Lizihi. Looking down at her from above, he spoke in his usual cool tone, yet without the usual aloofness. You're looking for me? Zhang Lizihi nodded quickly, clutching the hem of her clothes nervously. She raised her eyes to look at him, then quickly lowered her head again, her fingers frantically making signs in sign language. She was so anxious that her movements became somewhat clumsy. Her cheeks were flushed red, and her eyes were slightly moistened. Seeing her anxious expression, Kingsley felt an inexplicable softness in his heart and softened his tone on Trush. Take your time and tell me slowly. John Lazier took a deep breath, steadied his mind, and signed slowly and deliberately with his hands. Last night after I bumped into you, I suddenly found that I could speak again. But today, I can't speak at all. The doctor said it might be because that incident triggered something inside me. She paused for a moment, her fingertips trembling slightly, then continued gesturing. I want to try one more time. Could I get just a little closer to you? For the last few gestures, she moved with utmost gentleness. Her head bowed low, even the tips of her ears were tinged with a faint blush, and she dared not meet Tan Kingsley's eyes. Tan Kingsley was momentarily stunned. He lowered his gaze to look at the obedient yet anxious girl standing before him, remembering how, that night, as the street lamp lit up, her lips were swollen and red, her eyes were reddened, and just moments ago, Shed stubbornly insisted on smashing the street lamp by the roadside. Deep within his heart, a secret, fleeting sense of satisfaction surged back once more. On the surface he remained completely composed, even slightly furrowing his brow in a gesture of reluctant compliance. His voice was low and magnetic. Just this once, John Lazier suddenly looked up, his eyes instantly lighting up, as if filled with starlight. Occasional glances from nearby eyes turned toward them. Tan Kingsley subtly shifted his body, quietly shielding her in front of him, and took a few steps toward a secluded tree-lined path beside the court. The winter wind stirred up a few fallen leaves, and the surroundings were so quiet that all one could hear was the sound of their two breaths. John Lazier, his palms grew sweaty with nervousness. He slowly leaned in, closed his eyes, and gently pressed his lips against his. The moment their soft skin touched again, Tan Kingsley's body went slightly rigid. Without thinking, he raised his hand to support her lower back without pushing her away. A few seconds later, John Lazier suddenly stepped back, his cheeks burning so intensely they felt like they could catch fire. He frantically covered his mouth and tentatively made a sound. Tan Kingsley, a clear and tender voice, soft and gentle, softly rings in your ears, crisp and complete. She can really talk now. John Lazier, his eyes instantly welled up, and tears streamed down uncontrollably. She was both crying and laughing, repeatedly murmuring his name as if she had just grasped a treasure that had been lost and then miraculously found again. Watching her shed tears, Tan Kingsley's fingertips twitched slightly. Finally, he raised his hand and gently wiped away the tear from her cheek with the pads of his fingers, a gesture so tender it was almost unrecognizable, a stark contrast to the usually aloof and distant school heart-throb he usually portrayed. He cleared his throat, deliberately suppressing the upward curve of his lips. His tone remained calm and even, yet it concealed a tenderness that couldn't be hidden. What's there to cry about? You can talk now, doesn't that feel better? John Lazier sobbed, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Her voice was tinged with tears yet remarkably earnest. Thank you. Tan Kingsley looked at her reddened corners of the eyes and moistened lips, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly as he turned his face away. Her earlobes, however, were completely flushed red. After a long pause, he finally turned his gaze back to the girl before him, who was brimming with joy. He spoke softly, his voice carrying a hint of seriousness that even he hadn't noticed. You don't have to thank me. In the future you won't need to resort to such cumbersome methods when you speak. He paused for a moment, his gaze fixed squarely on her, and said slowly, one word at a time. I can keep listening to you forever. John Lazier stood frozen in place, watching his flushed ear tips and the deliberately nonchalant look in his eyes. In an instant she understood the feelings hidden beneath the aloof, awkward exterior of this cool and handsome school heartthrob. Unable to hold back any longer, she burst into laughter and gave him a gentle nod. The winter sunlight filtered through the branches and leaves, falling upon the two of them and casting their shadows long and stretched. Tan Kingzhe, who had always been aloof and taciturn, finally gave all his tenderness and special consideration to the girl who had stumbled into his arms and into his heart as well.